So, welcome back, everybody, in the next episode of the Energize with Brahm podcast. And today we are blessed to have Anita Schneyder from Teams on Purpose joining us. This particular podcast is dedicated to business owners, entrepreneurs, and proactive, growth minded professionals out there. So, people that appreciate personal and business growth, look for mindset tweaks, different hacks, and all sorts of ways to become more successful and more happy in life and work. So with that being said, Anita, welcome to the show. How are you going today?
Big thank you for having me, Bram. I'm really excited about today.
That's okay. We're really pleased to have you here. And just for everybody to know, Anita and I, we have decided to actually partner up. So we will be working more closely together in the coming months and years, hopefully. But we got to start somewhere. The reason why I invited Anita here today is that in the work she does as a consultant and leadership coach, she really strikes me as somebody who not only has good intentions. Let's be honest, care is important if you want to help people. But beyond that, you also need to bring personal expertise to the table that is of value to the people you serve. And Anita, I really like how you go about the workplace where you say that it's not just about human robots and machines that need to be working to reach certain business goals. It's actually about creating the human environment for people to thrive. And with that being said, how do you go about that in the line of work you do? And how do you work alongside business leaders to ensure that they create a great environment for people to contribute their best?
We're human beings and we're complex human beings. And I think a lot of our workplaces and our organizations are really set up for us to be robots. And some of the work that I do is really working with leaders and teams to help them see that every single individual on their team is a human being with their own dynamic struggles, personalities, fears, emotions. And really, we're all just trying to get our core human needs met in the workplace. And there's many models around needs, but really I help leaders to help their people be seen, be heard, be appreciated and valued, and get those needs met. Because when their needs are met, they're happier and healthier at work, and they're more motivated and engaged to actually put in. And when people put in extra effort, we get extra performance, and that's where all the good financial and customer benefits come from. So treating people as human beings first and not as robots is really how I help leaders and teams.
And this is interesting because you mentioned also hitting the metrics and the numbers, and your background is actually as an accountant, right?
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit more the first few steps you took in your professional career as an accountant and what it actually taught you that is still relevant today.
Yeah, I actually joke and say, oh, I saw the light and moved from accounting, but it still has a really warm place in my heart because I think when I left school, I actually had no idea what I wanted to do. And I started off at uni, thought, I'll see what happens along the way. And I ended up doing an accounting course and thought, I really like this. And what I really liked was the business aspect and the commercial aspect of it. And I didn't realize that at the time. And so I moved over to commerce and actually started out as a graduate accountant at an accounting firm here in Adelaide called Perks. And I did my chartered accountant's qualification there. And then I moved to a plumbing company and a winery, and then did a whole heap of accounting work on the side, because any accountant knows that anytime you say that you're an accountant, people ask you to do their tax. And so I started building a little clientele of informal tax clients on the side as well. Yeah, I had a whole career in accounting before I actually started to think about, hang on, there is more to the financial statements. There's more to the profit and loss, the cash flow, the balance sheet than just black and white numbers on a bit of paper. And to actually tweak and maneuver and have an impact on the bottom line, you actually need to think about the people behind those numbers. So I wanted the other bit of the puzzle to be able to influence change from a financial point of view.
Yeah, that's so good to see how you recognize that numbers tell a story of what the people behind are doing or not doing.
Absolutely.
I like that. And so it comes back to the point that we made earlier about humans are not robots or machines. And especially in the digital age of AI and all these sorts of things, we've got to really be very mindful of this here. But okay, so you worked as an accountant. Once you left the accounting firm, you became a general manager. I think you had about 20 staff that were working for you there. What has been a highlight from that particular thing there?
So, like all good accountants, if you're any good with people, you actually get promoted. So, I took that leap from accountant to the role of general manager. And to be honest, it was the biggest shock. So I'm not going to sit here and float my own boat around it, because it was actually a bit of school of hard knocks. Because when you move from a technical position to a leadership position, it's a different skill set and you have to put a different hat on. And I think a lot of our leaders, when they first step into leadership, aren't quite prepared for that transition. They don't have the training or the development. They might have some natural skills, but it really is a shock. When I stepped into that general manager position and was all of a sudden in charge of leading and managing people, and I had a couple of other leaders in the businesses as well, but it was really tough. I realized I needed more development, more training. And so I actually did as much learning as I could around how to be a great leader, how to manage a team, how to motivate people. I did a leadership program. And I think probably by the end of it, I turned out to be a pretty good leader. That was the catalyst of going, if I had this situation and these feelings of imposter syndrome and not knowing what I'm doing, then probably everybody else is having these feelings as well. So how do I do something about it and help others navigate this struggle that I was going through? So that was really the catalyst for a lot of the work that I do in terms of trying to find a better way.
Excellent. There's always the benefit of hindsight. And with the knowledge you have now and the self-awareness you have now, how would you reflect back on you being a GM and where were your strengths and weaknesses? I'm really keen to hear that.
Yeah, good reflection. Bram, I'm currently doing my master's in social and organisational leadership, and a lot of this is reflecting on your strengths and also areas or lessons you've learned along the way. And I've just realised how much leadership is a practice, and how if you're not making mistakes, if you're not failing from time to time, you're actually not throwing yourself in the arena and you're not actually showing enough courage in leadership. Oh, golly, I've made so many mistakes over the years and probably will continue to. But I think my biggest strengths has always been my relationships with people. Mm-hmm. I genuinely care. And I think sometimes, I'm never going to say I care too much, but there'll be times when I'm up at night thinking about how I could influence or how I could do things differently to build a relationship, or how do I build trust with this person. So I definitely care. So I think my biggest strength is being able to personally relate to people, be empathetic and build trust. And once you've actually got that trust in the relationship, you can influence. When people believe that you've got their best interests at heart and you're genuine and you're real, you can really influence as a leader. So that's been my biggest, I think, strength over the years and continues to be. Thanks for calling me out on that. That's the hard side to talk about. Probably the biggest thing is taking people on the journey. And I think when I first stepped into the GM position, I didn't know how much you had to communicate and almost over communicate. If you think someone has gotten the message, communicate again. And if you think you've communicated enough, communicate again. And that comes down to communicating the vision, communicating the goal, communicating any change, and really just communicating all the time, but also the coaching. I think probably I had a bit of a leadership shadow when I first stepped into my GM position, because I'd worked in the accounting environment and it was very much a traditional style of leadership where it was more, a lot of telling, and you just had to comply and you had to follow and you just put your head down, bum up. So when I first stepped into leadership, that was the leadership style I emulated based on those past experiences. And very quickly, I realized that that was actually not a conducive and probably pretty toxic style of leadership. And so very quickly, I had to switch and adapt my leadership style to more of a coaching approach where I'd ask questions. Hey, what do you think of this? Tell me what's going on here, and really adopt a curious coaching mindset. So that was probably one of the biggest ones. I think sometimes as well, I get a bit excited. I like to chase the nice, shiny thing. And I think in leadership, you need to be really clear on where you're going and have a lot of clarity. And I think probably on reflection, I maybe chase some things that weren't in the strategic vision because I got a bit excited. Now I've learned to bring that back and keep focusing on the goal, because having unclear expectations or changing the parameters is really unsettling for
Mm.
staff.
Absolutely. Hey,
Yeah.
I appreciate how you're vulnerable and open to share where you've been with that. And
Yeah.
hey, I can empathize. Like telling is not selling, we say, right? And
Mm.
asking questions is more coaching, and it's a lot more friendly and it's a lot more empowering rather than
Mm.
trying to control people. I think that's really the old way of doing things, telling and controlling and treating people like robots and machines. Definitely
Yeah,
not.
and no one likes being told what to do. I don't like that. And you almost get your back up and you almost want to do the opposite. It's interesting that leadership shadow still hangs about. And we all have a leadership shadow, but it still hangs about in times of stress or when I'm under pressure. I really do feel like to try and regain control,
Yeah.
I move back into that telling, but now it's being more aware of it and going, when I display those characteristics under stress, there's going to be an impact. So I think that's also about leadership, is even if you have a leadership shadow or some things that maybe don't serve your leadership as well, if you've got the self-awareness and ability to then change the behavior, that's what it's all about.
You just raised something and we're opening up a can of worms potentially.
I know, who knows where this will go.
When a leader is not self-aware and does not think that anything has to change from their side because it's the other people, their team, their staff, their employees, their colleagues that are to blame. What do you do that there if you want to influence them? Build that self-awareness and also that willingness to make changes. How do you deal with that, Anita?
That's complex. I think it's a really dangerous place when someone doesn't have self-awareness and they're not willing to address it. And I've certainly met many people that are not open to it, because anything in the work that we do, you can either accept or reject, and that's a choice. So I think it can be really dangerous. But if you can see that someone's got a big blind spot, in some leaders, they've never actually been provided any constructive type of feedback before around some of their behaviors. We're not great sometimes at providing tough feedback. And so the first thing I'd think in leadership, if you're dealing with someone like that, is to hold the mirror up and go, is this person even aware of some of the behaviors because they've had some feedback on it? So that's probably the first thing, because we all have blind spots, and unless someone brings it to our attention or shares that with us, we're not going to know. The difference would be if someone has had some feedback shared with them and they've gone, no, not for me. They might not be ready to accept it yet, or it might not resonate yet. It may do so in a month, 2 months, 2 years. So they might still come to that realization. But I think sharing the impact when this behavior happens, the impact of that on us is this, so that people are aware of the implications of some of that behavior. But yeah, I think if someone's got a real willingness not to accept some of the feedback, it can be really tough.
Yeah. Would it be fair to say that when a person presents themselves that way, they easily can become a bit of a rotten apple or a toxic environment just because of that already?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Patrick Lencioni talked about this concept really well. His work around the ideal team player. So to be an ideal team player, you need 3 characteristics, which are humility. So to be humble, you need people smarts, and you need to be hungry. But the humble part is really important, because when we're not aware or not willing and we think that we've got it all together and we're always right, and we're not self-aware of our behavior on others, that lacks humility. So it comes across as a lot of ego. So I think there's a whole body of work there to say that is the case.
Yeah. I'm really curious now about the following thing. Because of what you said, 3 things. So there's humble, there's the hunger, or let's say the drive. The second one is the expertise, or what they can do. How often would you see that leaders end up having a challenging situation to deal with their teams because they've hired for competence, but the other 2 were probably not there?
What Lencioni talks about is the expertise are more so not the IQ side, so not the technical ability, but more so the EQ. So is someone more people smart?
Yep.
Absolutely. I think, and this is one of the, I think, key areas that we encounter with leaders that have just stepped into a position is that they've got technical ability, but don't necessarily have the ideal team player characteristics, or they don't know how to resolve conflict, or they don't know how to collaborate, or they don't know how to build relationships and trust. Absolutely. And I think encourage anyone that's involved in hiring and recruitment to recruit based on values, based on people, because you 100% need to get the best fit for your team over getting 100% perfection on the technical side. And the technical side is actually really easy to see because it's in the resume. It's quite black and white. Can someone use this program or not? Can someone do this or not? Whereas the people side, the EQ side, it's a lot harder to see. And sometimes it takes a while once people to get into a role to actually see if someone has those interpersonal skills or those emotional intelligence skills.
As we're already speaking of that, do you use any tools like emotional intelligence assessments, 360 degrees feedback, or anything else to hold people a mirror in front of them and therefore make them a little bit more vulnerable with this objective tool that kind of compares them?
Yeah, absolutely. I think sometimes we just need some type of data, and the data in those type of tools actually help uncover some of our blind spots that we might not have been aware of before. I'm not aligned to any one particular tool, but I certainly bring in a whole heap of different experts and use things like Myers-Briggs type indicator. The 360-degree assessments, I absolutely use those. I use a soft form of them as well, because a 360-degree assessment where you ask your peers, people up and down in the business to assess you, can be really confronting if you're not ready or have a certain type of leadership maturity.
Yeah.
Absolutely, we need to collect all of that data to help understand ourselves better and be more aware. And I think that data is not only useful for the person receiving it, it's also really useful for the rest of the team in terms of understanding who that person is, what are their strengths, how can I support them with their areas of growth, and actually understanding the dynamics, of the team at play.
Great. The area that both of us operate in, let's say training, coaching, consulting, in the space, especially now for leaders and teams, it's very easily looked at as something that is airy-fairy, wishy-washy. So I'd like to come back to the thing where you actually started off with, which is where you said, look, I bring this commercial flair. I know numbers, but I also know that numbers tell a story, and that brings it back then into the human side of things. So with that sort of context behind it, how would you say that you measure success in this line of work so that clients actually can see for the money we paid, this is what we've gotten in terms of value, and it's substantially and measurable?
Yeah. Oh, that's a fantastic question, because I think this is one of the challenges that I think in our line of work is we know the value. Like, I will live and breathe this stuff and we know the value, but conveying that into the workplace in language and words that people understand is really important. I just had a giggle because I think probably early in my career when I was in the world of accounting, I used to think this stuff was airy-fairy and a bit of a wah-wah. I didn't really have an understanding of what it was. I'll tell you what, now being in this space, it's anything but that, because sometimes if you sit in a room with a team that's had tension building for a long time and you all of a sudden put that conversation or topic on the table, it can be really uncomfortable, and there can be tension there, but when it's uncomfortable and when it's tense is where we can actually start to have a conversation, start to break through. So it's nothing airy-fairy about some of the stuff that we're looking at. It can be really stringent. If people are happier and healthier at work, we can obviously retain them better. So that means they're going to hopefully hang around a lot longer. The cost of recruitment or finding someone new, a new team member, and to replace the skills lost when someone leaves is absolutely huge. And I don't pretend to know the figures these days, but it could be, I've heard people say, look, it's probably going to cost me $40,000 to replace this person if they leave. That's time taken to train, recruitment costs, onboarding costs, all of that. So straight away, if you can retain people and keep them, obviously the people that you want in your team, there's already a benefit there. Organizational health trumps some of the technical side of business every day. And so if you can have people that want to be there, they're motivated, they're engaged, they're going to be more productive. And I think we linked back to that before. They're actually going to perform better. They're actually going to serve your clients better. They're going to use their initiative and be more creative. When people are disengaged, disgruntled, don't feel like they belong, they stop putting in the discretionary effort and stop performing at the level that they actually could. So productivity and performance suffers. So we would generally get a bit of a gauge in terms of when we start a leadership program or a team development program as to where are things at now and where do we want it to be, and we'll start to track certain measures. Sometimes, it's the long-term impacts on it. You're not going to see results within a week. It's the type of work that you need to be layering. So you go, okay, week on week or month on month, we're going to move in the right direction. And when you reflect back, you go, wow, things have changed dramatically and our work output is all of a sudden we're working smarter, not harder, or we're having more effective meetings and making better decisions. And because we're making better decisions, we're getting better outcomes.
So far, I hear retention is one thing versus cost of recruitment. So if you have more retention, there's less cost of recruitment. Organizational health, that's something you can measure. Personal happiness of employees so that they're more engaged, you can measure that too. But definitely productivity is also something we can measure. Did I miss a few of how you measure success?
I think just another thing to add, I don't think you missed anything, Brian, but another thing to add is the personal impact. We are one whole holistic person. It's not like we're someone at home and someone at work. We bring our physical selves to the workplace. And if we're happy and healthy at work and we're kicking goals and achieving, we actually go back to our family members, friends, our community as good people. Stress at work is real and burnout at work is real, but the impact that it has on the individual and the impact it actually has when we take that stress home and we're not as present with our family, or we're not showing up for our children in the way that we want to, is a big impact. So there's actually a lot of well-being impacts in a lot of this, as well as the organizational impacts.
I fully subscribe to that, and I like how you frame that also from a community perspective. So it's so true, especially for the amount of time we spend at work. There's only so much time we then spend at home. And if we then take all of the stress from work into our home and to our communities and our clubs and our fraternities that we're part of, that definitely can have a negative effect.
Yeah.
I definitely see that. Let's have a look. Describe as, let's say, a typical sort of gig that you would do. So you're being called in to clean up someone's mess or whatever. And they ask you, hey, wave your magic wand, Anita. What tends to happen then? Describe as that little journey briefly.
Yeah, great question. Yes, sometimes I work with a team who are in breakdown mode. So there's a couple of different teams that I would work with. Some are in breakdown mode. So that means there's a real pain point for the leader. So the leader's going, look, my team is just not collaborating together. There's silos. So sometimes it's like that, where it has to be change. Other times a team will go, hey, I just want to get the little bit extra level of performance out of my team. We're already performing really well. I just wanted to come in and help do some of the preventative maintenance and take this team to the next level. So there's two types of teams. Obviously, the teams that we love are the ones that do the preventative work and they really invest and be proactive, and that's brilliant. But what it would look like is obviously having a chat with the leader and getting their perspective on what is happening for their teams. I'm identifying the pain points and the challenges and what is keeping them awake at night from their perspective. And after that, we don't just rely on the leader to tell us what's going on. We actually collect data. So the data might be some telephone interviews or going on site to actually identify what is going on. Because sometimes it's the system, it's the environment, it could be a myriad of things as to what is actually causing some of the pain points or challenges that the leader's speaking about. So we do a whole heap of data collection. That's all the pre-work that we do. We might look at things like doing some personality profiling for the team, doing the 360-degree feedback that you spoke about, and actually understanding the team composition and who we've actually got. And then normally what we do is put together some type of program that would last 6 to 12 months for the team. And we'd kick off with a bit of an intensive where we try and look at some team foundations. I've certainly done it online and done it in a virtual environment as well, if they're geographically located, but absolutely like workshop environment with a series of kind of different outcomes that we're looking to achieve. And it's really just helping the team come together, take time out and actually work on the health of the team, not back in the business. And then we'll put together some type of program around what their goals are and where they want to get to and what their vision is for that team. And then essentially over the 6-month period or 12-month period, we would have a series of workshops and potentially check-ins and accountability sessions to actually help the team move along and get to where they need to be and help them hopefully start to solve some of the problems or the challenges, or even explore some of the opportunities that they want to as a team to help them move to where they want to get to.
Yeah. And so a 6 to 12-month journey typically is what's part of this.
Yeah, I absolutely do half day, full day team sessions. If a team just needs a day out to like refresh or reset or things like that, absolutely happy to do that too. But I think if you're really wanting to shift culture, transform culture, raise the leadership maturity and bar, a long-term approach and a consistent layered approach is probably going to get you the best results.
Let's take it now to leadership development as such, because one thing that we have been working on in the background is a new cool program that is going to be online so that it's a lot easier to combine people from different territories, states, cities, and the likes, and even countries to bring them all together in the one program. Tell us a little bit more about your accelerator.
Oh, yeah, Team Accelerator program. So this is actually really exciting because this is taking all of the amazing bits of content and work and putting it in an online environment. So it just makes it so much more accessible for people. And also, I guess, takes away some of the struggle that some teams have in trying to get people all in a room together. So if you're geographically located, this is absolutely brilliant. And I think you touched on it, the learning that comes from that peer-to-peer, like people sharing together from different industries and being able to transfer knowledge is huge. So on the 14th of May, kicking off the Team Accelerator, it runs for 8 weeks, so 8 sessions, 1 session every week. The commitment is 90 minutes a week, and it's really designed to help accelerate the performance of your team in a 2-month period. So at the end of it, participants will be walking away going, oh, I can see actually an increase in effectiveness, performance, how my team works together. So it's a pretty powerful program that I think, yeah, I'm really excited about.
That's great. And it's live, meaning it's not pre-recorded, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. There'll be engagement too from participants so they can share their stories, coach each other, ask questions, all of that.
There's also a lot of application because one thing that I've asked you before we went live is your point of difference. And he said, hey, look, it's all good to have the theory and the philosophies, but you got to make it practical and tangible. And so that's definitely what you're clearly aspiring to do with this program.
Oh,
right?
absolutely. I think a lot of the time as leaders, we know a lot of things that we should be doing, but because sometimes of time, we don't follow through or lack of knowledge on how to practically apply it, we don't necessarily do it. So I think that the difference for me is actually taking some of the cool bits of scientific knowledge that we've learned through all these different team and management experts, taking that, but then actually translating that into how does this apply in the workplace? Because that's what people need. How do I apply this on a day-to-day basis? Not this pie in the sky theory that doesn't actually translate to the real world. So I think, yeah, absolutely 100% focus on very pragmatic, actionable strategies to then go and practice out in the workplace to then try and get change.
I'm just curious. I think it's important that nomen est omen, they say in Latin, which means a name is a song. And so when you chose your business name called Teams on Purpose, what led you there? What was the reasoning behind that? Because you could call your thing a lot, but why that name?
Good question too. I didn't know if I actually liked the name at first. It was one of a couple of options. And the only reason I say that is because I wanted to ensure that I built leadership capability. So I really wanted to raise the profile and confidence of leaders. What I realized is that everyone operates as part of a team, even if you don't have direct reports. Everyone is leading and everyone has a team, even if it's an informal dotted line team. So then I went, no, once I got over that mental barrier, I went Teams on Purpose. A couple of things. Obviously, purpose is really important in an organization and a business. Why are we actually doing the things that we're doing? Why do we exist? So that was one meaning. But then the other meaning of it is we're doing things intentionally and deliberately. So we're doing things on purpose. Our leadership is on purpose. Our team development program is on purpose. So I think the dual meaning of the why and also the intention is probably what drew me to that name in the first place. And the
Love
little
it.
logo has some people in it. So I thought that was cool because it's all about the people.
Yeah, I love that. And you know what? This makes me take a segue to a great leader that I had the pleasure of working with. And he said something that really hit home. And I'm just curious what your thoughts are on the following.
Oh, please
So,
share.
so he said, normally people say it's all about the customer. And so we do everything to treat our customer really well. But then he said sometimes we treat our own people, meaning our staff and employees, as shit along the way. He said, I take a different perspective. He said, I invest in my leaders first so that they can look after our staff, so that our staff are empowered to look after our customers. That sort of way that it trickles down. What are your thoughts on that one?
100% agree. So another couple of management leadership theorists, they actually said about the balanced scorecard approach. You might have heard of it before, but essentially same philosophy. You treat the people really well, you build them, you develop them, and that includes the leadership. And then what will happen is they will actually implement really good processes, systems, operations, and they'll actually care about it. So they'll do a good job. And then those processes, systems, good quality product will actually keep the customer or the client really happy. And it's almost like the finances take care of themselves after that. The issue that I see in a lot of work environments is the sole issue is on finance, for other measures first.
Yes.
And almost people are, what's that phrase where it's like they're means to an end, or it's just they're pushed to the side and they're just like a transactional thing to get the financial goal or meet the financial goal. But I think if we actually shift our mindset, and there's some amazing teams already playing in this space that we see, we actually shift our mindset and go, how do we help our people be the best they can be? And I was listening to an audio book, Leaders Eat Last by Simon Sinek the other day. And he spoke about the parent and the child. As a parent, if your child makes a mistake or does something you don't agree with or isn't performing for a certain reason, you don't just get rid of that child. They're your child. And so what Simon was talking about is we need to relate that in the workplace, that leadership is the parent, and we have a responsibility and duty of care to the well-being of the employees, who are the children. And we have a role to guide them, mentor them, develop them, create a safe, space for them. And if they do make a mistake or they're not necessarily performing, we don't just throw them out with the bathwater and fire them or performance manage them out. We actually try and work through what are the reasons for that poor performance and what resources and support do they need. Or is it that they're not suited to that role and maybe they should go somewhere else within the business? So I think thinking about it as a parent-child type dynamic also helps to identify and put your focus on the people first. So 100% I agree. And you're talking my language.
Wonderful. Look, just borrowing it from a great leader out there. All right. I've had this little moment as you were talking, and I was just keep thinking like, there must be a common denominator of where leaders right now might think they're on point, but they don't necessarily have it. So what are your observations from the work you do and the people you've worked with? Where is there a gap in the market? Where is it at times challenging for leaders to fully embrace that sort of concept of creating a great environment? Where is it sometimes being, what's the potential problem, the root cause, and what can be done about it from a leader's perspective?
I think the leadership challenge has become greater over the last 5, 10, 15 years. And I think the responsibilities on leadership in terms of the compliance and red tape and all the things that they need to think about has increased.
The commercials probably too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really a time factor. I know a lot of leaders aspire to be a certain type of leader, but because they get bogged down or pulled down into the weeds, they're not actually having that time to reach their full potential. And it takes some courage to actually say, hang on, and push back and say, no, I'm not going to be dragged in the weeds, and set yourself up in a way so that you can actually operate from a leadership perspective. So I think for some leaders, they're doing the management type tasks really well. So managers manage the things and leaders lead the people. And so I think we've got a lot of probably really good managers, but haven't potentially taken that next step to being a leader. And I think if you think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where you have to satisfy some of our base level needs, which are physical safety, security, love and belonging, and then we start to get to status and things like that. But most people don't actually get to the part of the self-actualization, which is the self-awareness and the self-regulation. And that's where the space that essentially leaders play. So I think they get stuck doing the management tasks and actually might need some coaching or mentoring and support to actually get to the space of the leader.
Describe me in one sentence your ideal clients, the people that you know you can serve really well.
Leaders who are willing to hold the mirror up, and leaders who are proactive in being the best leader and building the best team that they can.
Beautiful. Great. We're going to wrap up this episode here, Anita, but one last thing that I'd like you to share. Should people want to talk to you, where can they find you?
Absolutely. LinkedIn is probably the best spot, Anita Schneyder. Otherwise, my website, Teams on Purpose, www.teamsonpurpose.com.au.
Yep.
I've got a contact button there, so you can actually book in if you want a 15-minute telephone chat, or if you want a coffee with me, you can book in directly there as well. If you book in a chat with me, we'll have a lot to talk about.
I'm sure that people will already have gauged your passion and the fire in the belly that is really going very strongly. But hey, Anita, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. I appreciate your coming and sharing here with people. And for everybody who's been either watching or listening, this is just one other episode. There's plenty more coming. Appreciate your checking us out, staying tuned with us, and look forward to the next time. Thank you so much and have a great day.